Welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, and we're still talking about catastrophic care. And today we're going to get into how to solve the problem, which I think is the most exciting thing. I like this guy, David Goldhill, because he doesn't just complain about the system, he has ideas about how we can fix it. So according to Goldhill, the healthcare field is ready for creative destruction. I like that term, a term coined actually by economist Joseph Schumpeter. And he based this on the idea that capitalism is so powerful that it not only can create businesses, and it does that every day in our country, but it destroys businesses that are ineffective and can't compete anymore. And we've seen this. Entire industries have turned over because they were just rendered obsolete. What stands in the way, however, is increasing involvement by government, which favors protecting current vested interests rather than stimulating innovation. That's one of the problems when we get government involved too much in our lives. I agree. Our business model at the Wellness Forum is based on creative destruction in a strange sort of way, because what we teach people to do is to drop out of the existing system, and at some point, if enough people drop out and stop feeding the beast, which is healthcare, may die, or at least change in response to it. Since healthcare is controlled by government, it is important to look at the philosophical differences between the left and the right. The left thinks that Americans should have cradle-to-grave safety net, while the right states that it's impossible for things to change unless we let market incentives take over. Goldhill says they're both right and that they can support each other. His descriptions earlier in the book about healthcare in other countries like Singapore demonstrate that this is true. Part of this, of course, involves, and I've spoken about this many times, making patients consumers and getting the surrogates or the insurance companies out of the middle. So here's Goldhill's proposal, and I really like it. He calls it balance. He says, first of all, everybody will have a health account that belongs to ourselves and into which we pay a certain amount every year for everyday expenses. So you need a routine blood test, you've got a kid with a fever or the flu. These are the things that would be paid out of our health accounts. And then there would be insurance for large and unexpected claims. So if you had a heart attack at the age of 28, you might need more money than is in your current health account. This would require a contribution from everybody of someplace between $750 and $4,000. And before you gasp and say, oh my God, I can't afford it, remember most employers are already spending a whole lot more than that to feed the beast in its current incarnation. The deductible would start pretty low and it would get higher over time as people have more time to pay into their health accounts. And there would be some incentives, since the health accounts belong to you, to pay attention to costs. This really turns people into medical consumers. Loans against future contributions would be made for people who have some unexpected early stage, early in their life, heart attack or something of that nature where they haven't had time to pay in. And the collateral would be future contributions, since everybody would be required to pay in. Now, Goldhill acknowledges that you'd have to phase this in, and that one protected group we'd have to acknowledge would be existing Medicare patients over the age of 50. Medicare would pay into the insurance fund for these patients and be the beneficiary of claims. On the other hand, everyone under the age of 35 would immediately start out with the system that I just described. Those in the middle would transition gradually and be required to open a health account to start the process. Once the transition group reached Medicare eligibility, they'd be required to fund an increasing portion of their care depending on their time of entry. And of course, how would they do this? Because of all the deposits that got made into the account during their working life. This could even work with Medicaid, which combined with other government subsidies will pay out $1 trillion this year in benefits. Goldhill says that Medicaid patients must have the same ownership and become consumers like everyone else. Current spending, this blows me away, would allow for $10,000 per year per person for 40% of the population if we didn't change the cost structure. Of course, since there are currently payouts being made, this would have to be phased in as well. Additionally, the Affordable Care Act demands $100 billion per year in additional spending by the government in order to get people insured, and this money could also be used to help economically disadvantaged people. Now, it is a big change, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably nodding their heads and saying this will never happen, and there's part of me that says that too. It just makes too much sense. But it is something we should be talking about, and I actually have never heard an idea like this debated in Washington, and I don't remember anything like this being part of the discussion about the Affordable Care Act when it was being debated several years ago. So it seems like things that make sense don't really have a very good place in Washington politics. But Anyway, next week we're going to finish up this series on catastrophic care, and then we'll move on to some other programming. But hopefully this has been beneficial for you to listen to. And boy, if you just look at what's going on and you're having trouble figuring out how come in the United States of America we can't solve this problem, this book really lays out what stands between us and success. So that's all for now. Have a great week and a great weekend, and I'll be back to you on Tuesday.